Alright, hi everybody. I finally finished my next book, so I want to talk about it. The most recent book I read was Catch and Kill by Ronan Farrow. I took the jacket off because I really kind of hate book jacket covers. I don't know why. I just feel like I messed them up and I've ruined them, and I also feel like I don't know. I just don't like the way they look on my bookshelf. So I keep them on my books until I read the book, because I like to read like whatever the information is on the inside jacket pocket or whatever. But then after I'm done reading it, I don't want it anymore. So I usually put it in the recycling unless it's really cool, and then I'll save the image or whatever and maybe hang it up. Anyway, so this book, Catch and Kill by Ronan Farrow, is a nonfiction book, and I don't know if you may or may not know Ronan Farrow, or maybe you don't realize that you know him. He's the reporter that broke the Harvey Weinstein case, and a couple other sexual assaults by powerful men, rich, powerful men. He broke those stories as well, and he's also Dylan Farrow's brother, so Woody Allen's son, and so there's a lot of even childhood history with sexual assault for this author, and I myself am a sexual assault survivor, and so when he started breaking these stories, it was just, for me, it was like very encouraging and hopeful, because I don't know, I'm the kind of person that it's not like I want to avoid I don't want to avoid traumatic topics or like triggering news just because I have personal experience with it. But I'm very careful about the kind of news and the ways in which that news is portrayed, and like who's telling the story. And so a lot of times, especially if it's dealing with issues of sexual assault, the way I learn about it, right? Like learn about a story that's going on, is just by hearing from the people that are helping to call it out. And I get a lot of hope and inspiration, and I don't know, it actually helps pull me out of depression and anxiety. Like I remember when the Olympic gymnasts were just testifying one after the next in the Nasser case, and that moment, I think, for a lot of people was kind of triggering, because it was like reminding them of that these horrible sexual assaults go on. But for me, it was kind of freeing and made me feel hopeful about the future, because I'm just seeing like the flood of these women supporting each other and taking care of each other and speaking out against this. And so for me, Ronan Farrow was and is somebody who gives me a lot of hope and inspiration, especially because, and again, this might seem a little backwards, because I definitely am 100% here for women supporting women, but sometimes it gets exhausting to always have to support each other and then never have any support from men. And I don't want to give men like the credit. Like I don't want to give Ronan Farrow like the credit or name him to be some kind of savior, because that's not at all what it is, right? But when you're just in this constant fight against this violence against women, it's nice when a man is like angry enough about the violence that happens to women to do something about it. And for me, it just kind of gives me hope in like, okay, like they do care, right? Like they do actually, like they can empathize, and they do care, and they will help, right? Like some of them will actually put their neck out there and actually help. And so I've loved him for that. And so then when he wrote this book, or when I heard that he had written this book, I was a little apprehensive about whether or not I wanted to read it, because I didn't know what the topic was going to be, first of all, and I didn't know if it was just going to be too triggering for me to read a whole book. And I didn't know if it was going to really focus on sexual assaults or something else. So anyway, I read a little bit about it online, and it kind of online it kind of said that it's talking about his experience while trying to break the Harvey Weinstein case. So his experience with like people trying to squash the story, and also online it mentioned that it talks about like his personal relationship with his now husband then boyfriend, and how like all of this reporting affected it. And so based on that description, I was like, okay, I think I could maybe give this a shot. It doesn't seem like the main focus is like the specific details of the sexual assaults that are in his reporting. It seems like the focus is sort of like what breaking the story was like for him. So I got it, and then I hung on to it for a bunch of years and hadn't read it because I just wasn't sure if I wanted to deal with it, but I finally read it. And I would say that this book is worth the read, but anyway, it was definitely worth the read, but I almost think more than worth the read, it's worth the synopsis. So I guess it's good I'm making this video because I don't necessarily know that you have to read this book. But I do think that the information in the book is critical for us to understand the way that sexual assault, and honestly not just sexual assault, but just abuse of power happens, not just in this country, but all over the world. Because some of the things that he exposes, that he experienced as he's breaking this story, really, really show like how the world works. And so I guess I'll just give you, this is going to be a very spoiler heavy video, but the book starts out and he's just starting to work on the story, the Weinstein story, and at the time he's working for NBC, and as he gets further and further into the story, at first he has a lot of support from NBC News Network, and then as time goes on, all of a sudden they're starting to get shifty about him doing the story, and they put more and more and more burdens of proof for him to like interview more and more and more of these survivors, and they keep saying like, oh yeah, we'll run your story if you do X, Y, and Z more, and they keep just making the bar higher and higher, and he's just kind of like, okay, this is weird, this seems like a higher burden of proof than usual, but like whatever, sure, like it will only help my story to have more, you know, stories of survivors and different witnesses too. So he, you know, he keeps adding more to it, and then eventually, you know, it turns out that Weinstein is not only kind of friends with the people at the head of NBC, but like a bunch of them themselves are also sexual assaulters and harassers, and so they're trying to kill his story. So that's like a big chunk of what it's about, is like NBC and all their shady dealings with Weinstein and with these other powerful, mostly men, and just covering up stories and not reporting the real news, and their own involvement and their own complacency in sexual assault culture. And one of the things I learned while I was reading it is like a lot of these guys, like they're friends and they like abusing people in the same ways as each other, and so that's a big part of their friendship, but then also they'll like blackmail each other. So it's like they're not really friends because they abuse their friendships constantly to protect their own selves by blackmailing each other for the terrible things they did. And then the other kind of really big bucket in this book is that Weinstein had Ronan Farrow and a bunch of the different survivors that he was speaking to spied on, tracked, threatened, and it's very creepy and very extensive, the network of surveillance that some of these rich and powerful people have at their disposal. And the particular group that he exposes in this book is called Black Cube, which sounds like something from, it sounds like something from a movie. Like if you told me that was the name of the group, I would be like, no, that doesn't sound right. But no, the name of the group is Black Cube, and they're actually, this also sounds fake, but they're actually an Israeli surveillance company, and they are fully staffed by people who used to work in the Israeli military, doing surveillance for the Israeli military. And so just like the levels of the levels of power involved in silencing these women and scaring witnesses and terrifying people, and controlling people is like, it got me, as I was reading, I was definitely like pretty paranoid, and like, rightfully so. And so that's like a big chunk of it. And there's actually this woman, they literally, this is how effed up this group is. They literally hired a woman actress, like professional spy actress, to pretend like she was a different person and to go and befriend Rose McGowan, who's one of the survivors who spoke out against Harvey Weinstein, to go and pretend to be some other woman and to like bump into Rose and befriend her and like build this very close, tight-knit relationship with her, and then get all this information from Rose about what she was planning to report, about what her own personal stories are that could possibly be used against her to threaten her or blackmail her from wanting to speak up about anything. So basically, like, to befriend this woman in order to like get all this information from her in order to silence her. And when I was reading that, I was just like, I don't know how you, like, if I've been sexually assaulted, right, my career's been ruined, I've been blackballed, then I go to speak up about it, and then this woman who seems really great and becomes my best friend turns out to be working for my rapist in order to gaslight me and steal information from me and silence me and blackmail me. I don't know how you recover from that. Like, I don't know how you trust anybody ever again in your entire life. So that was mind-blowing to me. It also goes into detail about like some of the different powerful people that are involved. Obviously you have the Clintons. I don't know why we just continue to decide that we're fine with the Clintons when we all know that Bill Clinton is a rapist and probably a child rapist, but definitely a rapist, right? Like, and we're just like, oh, that's cool, it's fine. But his name comes up a lot in the book, and so does Hillary's, because she knows these things, and she was friends with Harvey, and she acts very shocked and chagrined when there's proof that shows that she knew what was going on. And so those are kind of like the big topics in the story, is like how the media works to squash these stories and how they are really in bed with the people they're supposedly holding accountable, and then also some of the different intelligence groups that are working for these powerful men. The other bucket that they mention there, and the name of the book is called Catch and Kill, because some of these organizations, and they specifically mention the National Enquirer in here, which is like a tabloid magazine, but one of the things that they do is they will find a survivor of sexual assault or rape, or honestly any bad thing, and they will say, hey, we're going to do your story, like, yeah, like, sell the rights to your story to us because we're going to publish your story. And they'll act really sympathetic, and they'll be like, this is so bad, I'm so sorry this happens to you, we're going to make sure that it gets out there and the person's held accountable. And so they trick these people into selling the rights to the story. And then once they own the rights to that story, in the contracts that the people sign, they're not allowed to tell the story to any other news network. And then National Enquirer just never publishes the story. So that's why it's called Catch and Kill. It's like, get the story, buy the rights to the story, never publish it. And they did a lot of that for Donald Trump, which they go into in the book. But they do that same thing for lots and lots of clients, essentially. And that's how those places are able to stay in business, because those very high-level, rich, mostly men, pay them money to basically do their dirty work of getting rid of all the negative stories about them. And I'm like, they mention a little bit about corruption in there. So I know there's other stories that aren't all sexual assault, but Ronan, that's the main thing that he focuses on. But I'm sure they do this all the time. And it just makes you really paranoid. Like, it's not like I ever trusted the government before, but it just makes it so in your face that, like, when you are rich, you absolutely positively can do whatever you want. Like, yes, you are above the law. Like, yes, the police do your bidding. Like, yes, the news media does your bidding. Like, there's no free press if you're rich, period. And these people are all friends with each other, and they look out for each other and protect each other. So that was mostly what the book was about. In terms of, it also goes into a little bit of detail about, like, his personal relationship with his boyfriend at the time, he's now married to him. And it just kind of shows, like, actually this was something that was really important to me as a takeaway from the whole thing, which is that when you sexually assault somebody, right, or actually just abuse them in general, right, like, no matter how you're abusing them, when you abuse somebody, there is a ripple effect, and there's a ripple effect for years, right? And I hate this concept, and I always have my whole life, that, like, if you get sexually assaulted or abused in a horrible way, that you're somehow like a broken person, or that you can't recover, or that something is fundamentally changed about you forever. I don't believe in any of those things. I think this is a thing that has happened to you that was awful, and it is a part of your story. It doesn't have to define you. It doesn't have to mean that, like, you're forever some kind of broken person. However, when you sexually assault someone, there's a ripple effect. You temporarily destroy their world, 100%, that is a fact. And also you impact everybody else around that person, right? Like, obviously their entire family, immediate family, is going to be affected. If they're a child, their parents are going to be devastated and out of their mind, and also trying to figure out how to take care of their child at the same time. If they have siblings, they're going to be affected. They're going to be simultaneously traumatized and also trying to maybe not think about it, or trying to figure out how to live their lives as a child in a normal way, like normal children. All of the friends of that person are going to be affected, right? If they're adults, same thing, right? All their friends are going to be affected. The person's job and wherever they work is going to be affected. All of their clients, if they have clients, are going to be affected. If they're in a relationship with somebody, that person is going to be affected. And at the very end of the book, after the book is over, right, and he's doing his acknowledgments, like a lot of authors do, and he acknowledges his editors and all the women that came forward and the survivors that spoke up, and he acknowledges his sister Dylan and how much she really supported him and has just been so strong through her whole entire life, and he acknowledges his mom. But there was one acknowledgement that really stuck out to me and reminded me of this, which is that he has another sister, not Dylan, and I forget her name and I feel bad, but I'm not going to look now. But he has another sister who was getting married at the time that he was breaking this case. And he didn't get to go to her wedding because he had an interview with a survivor at that time. And it's like, when you have someone who's willing to retell and reshare with you the worst moment of their entire life with you on camera, or record it, or for the press, or whatever, you're not going to tell that person, no, sorry, that's not a good time for me. You're going to say, yes, okay, I'm here for it, I'm ready. And so he did that. He made that choice instead of going to his sister's wedding. And I think it was probably the right choice. But I remember reading it and just thinking, if that was my wedding and that was my brother, like, I'm only getting married once. Like, that's it. Like, you missed my wedding and I'm not going to get married again. And that's part of the ripple effect. That even though the sexual assault happened years and years and years before this wedding, right? And even though this sister, whose wedding it was, has nothing to do with Harvey Weinstein, never met him, wasn't assaulted by him, doesn't think about him, right? her most important day of her life was very strongly negatively impacted by the hideous abuse of this man. And that's how sexual assault works. It's a ripple effect for lifetimes in untold ways that you would never even imagine it having an effect. And that's what I think a lot of times we don't talk about, right? We talk about the initial event and how it impacted the person that it happens to. And then we talk about how that person either healed or didn't heal and how that affected the rest of their life. But we don't talk about all of the ways that it impacts not just the immediate family, not just everyone who knew any of the people involved, not just the community, not just the neighborhood, not just the industry. It affects the whole world in a bizarre network of ripples that you would never expect. And that's devastating. And it makes it hard for us as a society to heal or have positive mental health when there's these ripple effects that just go on unchecked. So that was like a really big takeaway from the book, even though I kind of had that realization from the acknowledgments and not from the book. But that was a big part of it. So that's the book in a nutshell. In terms of whether or not it's well written or whether I would read it, I feel like the first 1/4 of the book was like, I was in. Like, it was like, it almost read like a thriller, which actually kind of made me uncomfortable because it was like a little bit infotainment. But it didn't feel sleazy at any point. The whole time it felt like really respectful. But so it was really easy to read in the beginning. And then in the middle, I just felt like he got kind of bogged down and repetitive. And maybe that's just because the facts are repetitive. But I don't know. I just felt like it didn't need to be as long as it was because it was just kind of a series of, and then this got blocked, and then this stopped, and then I still felt like I was being followed. And it's like, how many times are you going to say that you still felt like you were being followed? And it's like, I guess since it's, based in real life, a lot of times, because he probably thought that he was being followed for an extended period of time. So it makes sense. But I just, I don't know. I don't know if all of it had to be in there. And then towards the end of the book, it picked up again, and I felt like it was really worth it. But I don't know that, I don't know that I don't know that it's worth the read. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that I don't think that it is worth the read, but I think that the information in the book needs to be known. And the last thing I'll say about the book is that, like, if you're sitting there and you're wondering if this book is going to be triggering or helpful, if you yourself are a survivor of sexual assault, or if it's something that's impacted you in a close way, if you're sitting there wondering if this is going to be just a traumatizing drag, or if it's going to be helpful in some way, I would say that for me, it was actually really helpful. And a big reason that it was helpful was because a lot of times when this happens, especially when it's somebody really famous, like Harvey Weinstein, or some of these other actors, I always sit there and wonder, like, I start to get really angry and depressed and feel hopeless when I realize just how many people knew and didn't do anything, right? Just like how many people knew what was going on or witnessed what was going on and chose to do absolutely nothing. And this book kind of pushes against that idea, in that when you read just what even just the witnesses have to go through in terms of, like, the threats that are made to them and the intimidation and the surveillance and the spying and the blacklisting and the fear that's created, I don't know that I would say anything either. I don't know that I would. I like to say that I would. I think I would, but I don't know that I would. And that knowledge to me was a little bit freeing in a way, because it just reminded me that, like, no, there are good people. Not everybody that knows and doesn't say anything is some kind of demon person that thinks that sexual assault is okay, or that thinks that it's cool and fun. People are disturbed, they're shell shocked, they have bystander, I forget what it's called, but they don't know what to do, and they're scared. And they have good reason to be scared, especially in these really powerful, big name sexual assault stories, because these people could really do whatever they want to the witnesses. They really could. And the witnesses know that. And so they're scared. And so that to me gave me, like, it just made me feel better. Not in like a pacifying way where I accept that they're not going to speak up, because I think that they should. And I think that I am hopeful that we're creating a culture in which the expectation is that you speak up. But I feel like I understand more now why they don't. And that's really helped me not feel so shitty about the world and humanity. So yeah, I guess that's all my takeaways from the book. I don't know that I would read it, but you can watch this and hear all the main information from it. Black Cube, look it up. It's very scary. Okay.